Bum, bum, bum,
We're
bum.
live. Yeah, right. Can you do the SEC on CBS?
No.
No?
I'm not. No. Only Vern can do that. If one other person was to do it other than Vern, I would not be the one.
I don't think I could do it either. Vern is incredible. It's CBS. ESPN gets the SEC soon, which is kind of a drag.
When's the NFL contract up for TV? Is it the end of next season?
For which one? They're all
TV
on
rights.
different contracts.
The DirecTV one, Sunday Ticket.
Oh, I want to say 2021, 2022, maybe.
I was gonna say because I saw something that the NFL is suing DirecTV to try and get out of the contract early or something. I have to start scrolling by the links and not actually clicking them and like fully reading them. I kind of like read the first paragraph, see how long it is, and then I'm like, I'm gonna give up on this.
TLDR, baby. That's the internet for you. You gotta love it. All right, yeah, I just sent you the link. So yeah, blast that out. Oh, we had another friend retweet it for us. Thanks, Roberto. If you're listening, I really appreciate that. So yeah, hello everybody. Another installment of the For the Love of Sports NFL Draft Breakdown. Today I'm back with Justin Rasile. We're going to be talking about the AFC South. So we get a lot of fun stuff to talk about because of Tampa Brady and Jameis Winston staying in division and signing the weirdest contract maybe ever. But it should be a lot of fun, a little bit of information. Hopefully we share a couple laughs along the way. Isn't that adorable? So, yeah, I mean, we can just jump right into it. So AFC South, so we have the Falcons. They finished 7-9. I want to say they started like 0-6 or 0-7 or something. They started something really, really weird and terrible. Panthers 5-11. They were worse in the division. The Saints 13-3, lost in the playoffs against the Vikings per usual. And Tampa Bay Buccaneers 7-9 as well, tied for second in the division. Jameis went 30 for 30. So we're going to keep the Bucs till the end because I think they're the most fun. So let's start with the Falcons. What going into the draft, Justin, what did you see that the Atlanta Falcons needed on their team?
Yeah, I mean, they were really lacking in depth at a lot of key areas. Corner, defensive tackle, interior offensive line. Obviously, there's some spots that they've tried to address the past couple seasons throughout the draft, but it just kind of hasn't seemed to stuck. Obviously, with the signing or with the declining of Takk McKinley's fifth-year option, it opens up a need for pass rusher. Obviously, they signed Dante Fowler Jr., which, I mean, as a Jags fan, I've watched him quite a bit over the years, and then obviously when he was those last 2 years in LA, I was kind of keeping a close eye on it as well. Good situational pass rusher. He's kind of a product of a good environment when he's never the number one target on as the pass rusher. It's always worked out for him. But we'll I don't know. We'll kind of see how he does as he's the lead guy now. They did address some of the needs throughout the draft, but he's going to have to be the guy.
Yeah. I mean, well, Takk McKinley is still there, so this is his fourth year. So he has one more year, so he'll be there. But I do think, as you said, it's not going to be. I feel like the Falcons are always in need of pass rushing. Like it's weird. Like I feel like every year they take one, and every year that guy never pans out. So I don't know who they took in the draft this year. So I guess we'll talk about that. But he's probably not going to pan out. No offense to that guy. Just a couple things, as you said. They brought in Dante Fowler. They lost some guys. In Vic Beasley, he's gone. Campbell's gone. Austin Hooper signed that huge contract with Cleveland. Desmond Trufant got cut, if I'm not mistaken. Adrian Claiborne left as well. So they lost a lot, but they did bring in Todd Gurley. So I don't know. We'll see. We were talking about him the last time. I mean, let's get into that a little bit before we go into the draft. Like, what does he have? Is he going to be? I mean, he wasn't terrible last year. He just wasn't worth all that money. So, I mean, is he going to be that bad this year?
Yes, I think so. I think that last year the Rams schemed him in positive situations. So whenever they put him on the field, they knew that he had a high success rate of doing what he needed to do. And I mean, McVay obviously knows him better than anyone else. So he knows what he needs to do to get him running, get him going, making sure. I mean, maybe they're trying to save his legs for the playoffs. We still never really got a clear answer out of what actually was going on with him. So I don't know. I really can't see him having too much left in the tank. But what is he, 26 years old? Like that's the thing. That's younger than us,
right? And he missed an entire year with that pretty bad ACL injury, if I'm not mistaken, a few years back while he was at Georgia. So it's one of those things. Like I don't know. I think he wasn't bad. I think he still ran for 1,000 yards last year, if I'm not mistaken, or came really close to it. 2 years ago, obviously he was like in the running for MVP. So it's just crazy how quickly never pay running backs or give him the fifth year, right? Like as we were talking about, Takk McKinley got his fifth declined. If they just said, hey, we'll give you that 5th year and we'll talk about it, they would have seen like, oh my God, no, we can't then give him all this money. Now they're hit with all this dead cap and it's just a whole thing. I wonder
And they
if the
still haven't
Rams
paid him
ever,
yet.
I was going to say, I wonder
Nope.
if the Rams ever paid him. Because
Nothing. Nope.
that's a situation
Clay
that might,
Matthews as well. They haven't paid him yet either.
ooh, we'll have to see about that one. So that's always an interesting one getting into it. Vic Beasley, he had one incredible year, but I feel like that was kind of a fluke more than anything. So going into the draft, as you said, they're going to need help at corner. They're going to need help. They're always in need of help at defensive line. I think their offensive line, they've drafted 3 offensive linemen, if I'm not mistaken, in the last 2 years of the first round. And I feel like all of them just keep getting hurt.
Yeah.
So going into the draft, I mean, how do you feel about what they did and I guess in general, how they did it?
Yeah. So, well, there's actually, I don't know. If we start round 1, I'm not sure if that's how you want to kind of go with this, but they reached for a corner in the first round. They took AJ Terrell out of Clemson. He's a pretty good corner. He was definitely a reach. Like a lot of people were saying that maybe end of the first, early second. We'll kind of see where he lands. And then the Falcons all of a sudden just jumped on him, and we're not sure if it's because CJ Henderson got taken at 9 to Jacksonville, and that's why they were aiming to jump up in front of them or trade up with Jacksonville, assuming Jacksonville had more holes in their defense than just corner, which they did. But Jaguars went with the premier guy on their board. So I guess maybe once CJ Henderson was taken, the Falcons, I don't know if they panicked or if this was just something on their minds that they were like, "Yep, if we're going to stick in this spot, we're going to go with our number 3 corner on the board, no matter what. We don't give a shit what anyone else thinks."
Yeah, I mean, I guess that this year specifically, especially, I guess is a better word to use, it was a really weird year, obviously, with the virtual draft and everything. But I do think, I mean, again, if as long, I'll call us the media, right? Hello. The people in the media may have certain grades on people, but you even heard a bunch of GMs come out and say, like, most of you people are wrong. Like, we don't have anything close to that. So that's always interesting, especially because there's no pro days. I mean, Terrell's coming from a great defense, so I don't know how that much helped. As you put here, he got torched by Jamar Chase, but I feel like everybody kind of got torched by Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow this year. So that is what it is.
That was a little like I did go back and watch that Clemson LSU game, and I just watched Jamar Chase versus AJ Terrell, and Terrell did hold his own against the potential top 5 draft pick next year in Jamar Chase. It's just that Chase does make everyone look like he made CJ Henderson look like that. He made every single corner that he's faced. Just kind of look like that.
State,
he's that kind of a man child that's coming out next year. It's just funny because he's a true sophomore. So.
I was going to say he's a sophomore. He won the I don't know Blitnikoff. Thank you. Won that award, which doesn't really happen too often. But as you said, true sophomore winning it, not even redshirt. So he's got room to grow, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, so we're going to see how he does next year without Joe Burrow and Joe Brady.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's the rub. That offense, I think their whole offensive line is gone. Almost like half the receiving core is gone. Joe Burrow is obviously gone. The offensive coordinator or the passing game coordinator, whatever the hell we want to call him, defensive coordinator. I don't think that team's going to be very good next year, but I'm going to watch them because I love Coach O. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
we will see what happens. You have a good question here. Why when teams were calling, they were at 16. So a lot of teams were calling about CeeDee Lamb because he kept dropping.
Yeah.
Why didn't they trade back? Maybe pick up another, 4th, depending. They were probably going to trade with the Eagles. And I think the Eagles were around 21. So they would have traded back 5 spots. You probably could have got a 3rd for that. So, what do you think the reason was? Like, why did they actually think Terrell was going to go? I mean, I think the Raiders at 19 took somebody a little too high as well. So did you think they were worried about the Raiders?
Yes. Yeah. Because the Raiders only draft people from Clemson. So I think that was one of their main worries. The other one is the lack of trust between the GMs this year, just because there wasn't that group think between all the scouts from going to pro days, from going to the combine, just all the scouts kind of meeting up and talk. I mean, obviously they were all at the combine, but pro days and everything else like that. Like they weren't meeting up and they weren't discussing things. And whether it was subtle hints about maybe we're lying this way, we're going to say we like this guy and we really like this guy. I mean, there were I forget who it was the past couple of years, but there was a GM who would purposely leave names of draft prospects up on his whiteboard. So when his assistants would walk in, they would see the name and they would immediately go to the first media person that they knew or they trust, and they would just leak the information out. Well, they didn't have that option this year because everyone was working from home.
I love that, man. That's sneaky. I mean, I wish I know we're talking about football, but the Mets do that all the time just because they're stupid, though. So I guess that's just something completely different. That is Mets fandom for you. And then so you have another great question here as well with the signing of Tom Brady to the Buccaneers,
Mm-hmm.
they still need cornerback help, right? And I'm looking down the board. I mean, they grabbed a safety in the 4th round, so I don't know how much that's going to impact their defense. I mean, is trading essentially Trufant for AJ Terrell going to be a 1-for-1 or even an upgrade?
Well, they really do they love Isaiah Oliver, and Dan Quinn even came out and said that he considers him the CB1 right now. So he considers him the number one guy. So not saying that he's going to be the guy that follows and trails other wide receivers on the number one wide receivers, but he is the guy they're going to kind of look to make the transition for Terrell a little bit easier as coming into the NFL.
Well, if that works, I mean, put him on the number 2 receiver again. I thought he was pretty damn good at Clemson outside of a couple games against those elite wide receivers. And hey, that's going to happen sometimes. So it is what it is. So moving on to round 2, they grab Marlon Davidson. Here's our defensive lineman out of Auburn. What can you tell me about this guy, and why is he going to be a bust?
I don't think he's going to be a bust.
Well, he's on the Falcons. We already talked about that. Defensive linemen don't work on the Falcons.
Defensive ends don't work on the Falcons.
I apologize.
I love Marlon Davidson. He was just like this big, giant defensive tackle, defensive end. He was kind of like that 5 technique. So he would line up over top of the tackle, and he would just bull rush everybody. And you know what? It's crazy because he had a good amount of pressures from the interior, which we obviously don't see a lot of anymore. Plus his versatility, so you can kind of scheme him around a little bit, the defensive line, just kind of mix things up a little bit, just put him in the best situation to succeed. But
how much did he benefit with Derek Brown being there, though?
So Derek Brown was obviously more of, you kind of know my feelings of Derek Brown. I consider him more of a nose tackle. He's going to be a great run defender. He's not. I can't see him surpassing more than 8 sacks a year, which drafting him in the top 10, that's kind of absurd. Like if we kind of saw him through my eyes, he would have been in the same spot as Marlon Davidson was, like the end of the 1st, beginning of the 2nd round, because you don't draft non-pass rushing defensive linemen that early. But Davidson did it well. Like you put him in situations to succeed, and he can kind of do his thing there.
And that's pretty important. Again, they're always in need of pass rushing help. Moving on to the 3rd round, it looks like they grabbed another center. If I'm not mistaken, they grabbed a center in the 1st round 2 years ago when I can't remember his name, but is this a depth play, or is whoever they grabbed at center just that?
So they signed Alex Mack. He was a free agent when he left the Browns, but they did draft. I'm trying to remember his name. James Carpenter, Chris Lindstrom, the kid out of Boston College.
Okay.
But I think he played. He was center and guard at Boston College. So they were able to move him around a little bit. Plus Mack, he's primarily played center in his NFL career. So I don't know. Well, they're obviously trying to build something there. They're trying to build this power run game, which might end up benefiting Todd Gurley, because that's kind of a scheme that he was working, that zone blocking, that outside zone blocking run game that he pretty much perfected while he was with Sean McVay. So if that kind of works out, they kind of stay healthy on the offensive line, they could have a pretty good team. And not to mention, they still have Matt Ryan back there. They still have Julio Jones. They still have a good wide receiver core.
Ridley,
so so looking at just the numbers, looking at just the players on the depth chart, they have good depth along the on that offense. It's just a matter of that defense kind of stepping up and doing their thing, which should be Dan Quinn's specialty.
We would hope. I think it's just the funny statistic. They have a 1st round draft pick at literally every single position on their offense, which never ever happens. But
10 of 11, I think.
Is it? Because I think they signed Laquan Treadwell.
It's yes. Yeah. All right. So I guess 11 of 12, because
it's something weird. Yeah, it's something weird. But they're essentially going to have like a 1st round draft pick at every single position, which is just crazy to think of. But there's also a reason for that. That doesn't mean there was a couple busts in there. That does mean that there was some problems. Again, Todd Gurley and his knee. I think that's more of a product that the Rams were like, we can't possibly pay Jared Goff and Todd Gurley and Brandon Cooks 90% of our cap. That's not how a football team works. But it is what it is, and that is how it happens. So I do think, with Matt Ryan being sacked 48 times, not a great look. Thankfully, he is, I guess, we'll call it available, and he stood the test of all of those sacks, and he just kept it going. So with a couple 4th round picks here, we have Mikhail Walker, inside linebacker out of Fresno State, and Jalen Hawkins, safety out of Cal, both in the 4th round. Once we're in the 4th round, again, we're not, sometimes you can find those guys that are going to start, and you'll see a couple drafts. You'll see the Steelers do it all the time. You'll see the Packers do it all the time. Maybe not this year, but in general. How did you feel about these two guys going in the 4th round where they did?
Yeah, so they were primarily depth signings, mainly because their defense that it just keep constantly getting hurt. Keanu Neal keeps going down. He's obviously had a knee injury. He's had a little bit of the injury bug bite him the past couple of years, so that exactly hasn't worked out to the way that he wanted to. And then you drafted Michael Walker, mainly to back up Deion Jones, who got hurt 2 years ago, kind of looked a little slow last year coming off of the injury. So they're hoping that he can kind of take a step forward. Hopefully another year pass will help his recovery over this. But with Walker, it's kind of nice because you can he's a versatile guy. So you can line him up outside. He's great at edge rushing, but he's primarily a depth pick.
And you need those, right? I think that part is pretty important, and you have to build depth, especially at places like safety. You have to build depth. I mean, there's play special teams, as you said. So I think that is going to be important. And hey, maybe one of them, maybe you hit on one of them. What's the worst thing that can happen? And then I think was this the first punter that got drafted? Sterling, whatever, out of Syracuse. Hofrichter. Thank you. Yes. I know there was a kicker in the 5th round, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the kid out Marshall at the Patriots. Too.
Yeah, the kid that everyone's piling on the internet. Yeah.
I mean,
but I don't think there was
choices as a young kid.
What are you gonna do? I've done some stupid things. That's why we deleted that Twitter account. But with that, I mean, you're familiar with drafting punters. I mean, how do you feel about this in the 7th round at least?
Yeah, in my expertise of being a Jaguars fan, don't draft punters. Just pick them up in free agency or undrafted signings. Yeah. You know what? This kid who's a 4-time Ray Guy candidate, which for those of you who don't know, he's the nation's top punter. So he was obviously nominated 4 times. So he was always involved in being one of those top punters, especially at a school like Syracuse where you're punting a decent amount. But the nice thing about him is he's a directional punter. He's not just that giant leg, which yes, he does have good hang time. But he's able to have the field in any kind of way that the team kind of wants, the special team coordinator wants to go. So if he's able to kick it left, kick it right, cough and kick it in the corner, that's great. Because then as soon as you do that, it makes the return game that much easier or that much more difficult for the returning team.
Yeah, I think, if a good punter it's awesome to have, but it's not a necessity. I mean, I saw it with the Giants. Jeff Eagles was awesome. What he could do is just so weird how good he was. He didn't kick it very far. I mean, earlier in his career he did, but he was always just great. It's like, all right, you want at the 10-yard line? Here you go. You're at the 10-yard line now. So it was pretty great. And I think the last time a punter went this high, Michael Dickinson, if I'm not mistaken, to Seattle, and he is crazy. Other than that one super weird onside kick he tried to do in the playoff game, I think everything he's done has been phenomenal. So again, if this is, I feel like it's kind of like a wide receiver in the sense where it's kind of like icing on a cake if you have a really good punter. I wouldn't quite put it that far, but I don't know. I feel like there's other things you can do in the 7th round, but maybe they thought this was a necessity. So,
I mean, honestly, you're just kind of throwing a dart at the dartboard, just hoping to hit on somebody. But sometimes when you draft a guy that's more of a special teams player like that, like a kicker or a punter in the 7th round, I mean, it kind of just gives them a bit of a vote of confidence. I mean, they do currently have a kicker on their team right now. They have a punter. They have Ryan Allen. So. I mean, maybe that's sending him a message. Maybe his contract's a little bit more than they want to kind of pay. They're kind of looking to go a different way. But I mean, you wouldn't draft somebody if you're not looking to take his position. So
exactly,
he's coming in for competition.
I was gonna say it might be it's competition, but it's also probably pay. If depending on how long he's been there or whatever, a 7th round pick isn't going to cost you too much money. So it's definitely just one of those things. So interesting, but I don't know. I don't totally agree with it. It is what it is, though. I'm not a GM, so maybe that's on me. But moving on to the Carolina Panthers, had a very, very weird year. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey just got paid, which is awesome. They fired / mutually agreed that Ron Rivera was going to leave. So they bring in Matt Rule. Then we hear about Joe Brady signing an extension at LSU, and then whoops, nope, he's coming to the NFL. So he's hanging out with Matt Rule over in Carolina. They brought in Teddy Bridgewater, I think 3 for $60 million. PJ Walker, Robbie Anderson, Trey Boston. I mean, they lost James Bradbury, went to the Giants. Mario Addison went to Chicago. Gerald McCoy, forgot he was there, honestly. Greg Olsen was kind of let go as well. That was weird. And Dontari Poe went to Dallas as well. Going into the draft, what did you think were the biggest needs for the Carolina Panthers?
I mean, they're just a team that's rebuilding. So they pretty much need talent everywhere along the entire team. They didn't have, I mean, I'm still not fully sold on Teddy Bridgewater either. So, I mean, you could stand to upgrade on freaking 22 positions on that team right now. So they were basically just going best player available. Hopefully that's what they were doing. They were just following their board all the way down. And I mean, if you look at the draft picks that they made, I mean, it's definitely a different kind of a draft that they went because they didn't take a single offensive player. They're the first team ever to spend all 7 picks on defensive players. And I'm not sure if that's clearly just to combat the Tom Brady signing, or if Matt Rule just looked at his defense and was like, you know what, this thing is terrible. Let's just completely blow it up and let's just keep adding talent to it. We'll figure out the offense next year. We have Christian McCaffrey. He did everything he could last year. If he do that for the next couple of years, because I mean he's not a traditional running back. He's not getting beat up the way that other running backs get. And when he is getting tackled, he's not getting. It's not like a hard tackle. Yeah. He's kind of he's getting side tackle a little bit, so he's kind of falling over into the grass. So it's you don't have to worry about his knees. You're not worrying about his ribs. You're not worrying about all these things that we were worrying about when he was coming out of Stanford, because we were a little concerned with his 9 bench press reps.
Yeah, I mean, he was a little bit smaller. I feel like he got he got a little thick since he's been in Carolina.
Yeah, he got yoked.
He definitely built himself up a little bit. And I mean, I loved watching him at Stanford, and it's been a lot of fun watching him here in Carolina as well. So yeah, that was the first time a minimum of 7 picks were all taken on defense, which is crazy. And I mean, their offensive line, I know they traded Trey Turner, the other Trey Turner, for Russell Okung, if I'm not mistaken. So they helped out the left tackle position a little bit, which is a really weird trade. There's something going on there. Do you have any insight on why you would trade a guard for a maybe not premier, but a pretty damn good left tackle?
It was more of the Chargers kind of doing. Also, one thing that we tend to forget is Russell Okung is his own agent, so he's kind of manning the ship how he wants to, which I don't fully understand. Like, did he demand this trade? He just wanted to get out of LA, or did the Chargers? They looked at it like, okay, we're okay with our backup at left tackle. Let's take that premier left guard and let's just stick him into that offense, and let's just kind of keep that thing going towards playoff contention. But ready, let me just run through the Panthers offensive line real quick. Let me show you how bad it is. So you have Russell Okung, pretty solid. John Miller at left guard, Matt Paradis at center, Dennis Daly at right guard, and Taylor Moton at right tackle. Are you kidding me? Like, your backup left tackle right now is Greg Little, who is just beyond dog shit. Like, I can't believe that he's still in the league, honestly. Or granted that he's not the starter at the right side. Like, he's really just the backup to Russell Okung right now. So little concerned if I'm a Panthers fan, because what's this team doing right now? Like, I mean, I get it. Everywhere Matt Rule has gone, he's completely taken a rebuild and he's built it all the way up. He did what Tampa did with Baylor, and I mean, why not in Carolina?
It is weird. I mean, considering how bad their offensive line was, Christian McCaffrey still ran for 1,000 yards. I think that's more him than anything, but it is definitely cause for concern. Again, if there's no holes, I mean, we watched the XFL for a minute, and you could see the reason they couldn't run the ball was because there's no holes, because the offensive line was just that bad. The offensive line play is that bad. And if you can't make holes, I mean, it's just going to be difficult. I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is very good. I think he's very okay.
Serviceable.
Yeah, exactly. He's definitely serviceable. I think the contract was 3 for $60. I'm pretty confident they can get out of that in 2 years, probably with like a very little hit for the 3rd year, because that's pretty much how all contracts are created now. So I don't know. It's still weird to me, but as you said, they went straight up defense the entire time. We talked about Derek Brown a little bit first round. Yetur Gross-Matos, they grabbed him in the 2nd round. I mean, that is 2 starting pieces to your defensive line right off the bat. I mean, how do you feel about those 2 guys? And more importantly, how do you actually think they'll fit together?
Yeah, I mean, they're also pairing him with Kawan Short. So like this defensive line is looking pretty deep right now. And it's one that will find the interior pass rush to hit Drew Brees and Tom Brady, which is clearly what they're trying to build. Yetur's, he's not polished yet. He's kind of getting there. My only problem with him is he doesn't look as aggressive as he should be when he's playing the game. So I don't know. His story is great.
Oh yeah,
he has great upside. He looks like a 4-3 defensive end. So I mean, getting him in the 2nd round where they got him is great value. As long as they can coach him up a little bit and kind of change his mentality, which I know that is a difficult thing to do. So if they find a way to kind of tap into his inner dog, then we'll kind of see if he can become and blossom into this terrific pass rushing defensive end, which we can obviously see just watching the film.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so for their sake. And again, just pairing him with Derek Brown, as you said, Kawan Short, that defensive line is going to be pretty hefty. And again, Derek Brown, as you were saying, he's more of that run stuffer, but he does possess some pass rushing abilities. And what do we know about Tom Brady and Drew Brees? Rush them in the middle, right?
Yeah,
if you can get any pressure on them in the middle, we saw it with Drew Brees last year multiple times, especially in that game against the Vikings, which we'll touch upon in a couple minutes. But if you can rush them in the middle, get that pressure from the middle of the pocket, they kind of weirdly enough just crumble. So I mean, but it's so funny how we say that about Tom Brady and Drew Brees. If you rush anyone from the middle, unless it's like Patrick Mahomes or Russell Wilson, where they can kind of just slide out, it's a kind of ridiculous statement, but we're going to run with the narrative because narratives are fun. So, building up that defensive line again, you have three. I mean, Hall of Fame. I don't know. Do you think Matt Ryan's a Hall of Famer?
Yes.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yes. No, I think so. Especially because he got that MVP. He got to the Super Bowl, and it wasn't his loss of the team blew 20-3 lead. It's all Kyle Shanahan's fault.
Well, I mean, all he had to do
and the defense collapsing a little bit,
and complete one pass and not fumble the ball. I mean,
that throw and that catch by Julio Jones would be forever solidify as one of the greatest things if they win that game. But because they didn't win that game, we all remember the Julian Edelman fingertip catch.
Yep. Well, yeah, we all forget the Seattle Seahawks one too. I think it was Doug Baldwin where the ball's like floating in the air for 5 seconds. Was it? Whoa.
John Baldwin. Yeah, Pittsburgh.
Like he's on the ground, the ball's just kind of hanging there. He catches it. Marshawn Lynch runs it, doesn't get it in. Then they throw the ball and that's over. So yeah, there's a couple of plays the Patriots won't really allow us to remember anymore. But again, I think building up that defensive line, potentially having 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks in that division. Granted, they're all towards the end of their career. Drew Brees hasn't won an MVP, but I mean, we could pretty much call him an MVP quarterback, which is weird. If he gets in the Hall of Fame without one, that's gonna be really confusing. But
he grew up in the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning era. I mean, it's not his fault that he
and the Eli Manning
up against this. Yeah, how many MVPs did Eli win? Let's go.
2 Super Bowl MVPs. Moving on, they traded up in the second round and grabbed Jeremy Chin, safety out of Southern Illinois. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know too much about him or about Southern Illinois. What can you tell me about this guy?
Sure. Yeah. So this is the kid that everyone kind of kept saying, if you miss out on Isaiah Simmons in the top 10, this is the kid you're going to want to target in the second round. I just can't believe he fell to the 64th pick, and the Falcons were able to trade up and the Panthers were able to trade up and grab him where they grabbed him. I mean, I get it. Playing at a small school like Southern Illinois doesn't exactly build a vote of confidence in these scouts and these coaches and be like, okay, look at the competition he's going against. Yeah, but this kid's a freaking heat-seeking missile. He's out there and he's laying these kids up. And I get it that he's not playing at a big-time school, but you know what? Put him on the field against these guys and he's going to hold his own.
That's awesome. And he's a safety, right? So
yes, he's a versatile defensive player. So like he's able to play like that outside linebacker type, especially because they run a 3-4. So they have those 2 outside linebackers who, I mean, you're going to kind of use them in blitz packages, or if the one's a strong side, the other one's a weak side, you can kind of drop the weak side one back into coverage a little bit. Or he could play nickel, he could play safety, he could play deep part of the center field, or he can come up in the box. So
you can throw him around a little bit, kind of. Almost like that amoeba that, as you were saying before, that kind of like Isaiah Simmons, just clearly not as nearly as athletic, because I don't think anybody on planet Earth might be. So I think that's pretty important. So yeah, I mean, with the first 3 picks in the top 2 rounds, I mean, it sounds like they have 3 starters right off the bat. I mean, that are going to come in and make some pretty good impact. So obviously they traded up in the second round. So it sounds like that was their 3rd round pick that they used to get up there. So now in the 4th round, they had picked Troy Pride, cornerback out of Notre Dame. I don't really know too much about him either. What can you tell me?
Yeah, so he's a bit of a depth guy, especially because their 2 starting corners right now are Dante Jackson and Corn Elder. And I honestly still can't believe that Corn Elder is still a starting corner in this league. So you're taking Troy Pride, who he's athletic. He just I don't know. He lacks confidence in his play. And it's kind of hard to explain that without actually watching. But like you can kind of see like that split second where he hesitates when he's doing certain things. So the ball's up in the air, he doesn't exactly react to it the way he should react to it, or a runner's coming at him and he kind of just like freezes like a deer in the headlights for like a split second. And it's just, I don't know, it's kind of one of those weird things. So hopefully Matt Rule, and we get it, he's great coach and he seems like a good person. So you really hope that you can kind of tap into like the mentality of some of these players and get them into kind of buying into everything that he needs them to buy into. That way they kind of stop thinking and start doing.
Absolutely. And Matt Rule's going to be there for like 8 or 9 years, I think his contract runs for. So good for him. But yeah, I mean, hopefully he can be able to tap into some of these players. So that's another defensive back. So then we have another defensive back. Now this one's really interesting. Kenny Robinson, safety out of West Virginia, but really he was a safety out of the XFL and actually had like a pretty good, 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know how many games they ended up playing, but he used to did pretty damn well in the XFL. And it's this weird, like he had to go to the draft because he wasn't removed far enough from his 18th birthday. I think you have to be 3 years removed at least from your 18th birthday to be able to enter, or 3 years removed from your high school senior year or something. Yes. So it's really weird, but that's how he was then able to go into the draft rather than just be signed directly.
Right. Yeah. Because, I mean, I think I'm dating myself now, like 12 years ago, I think it was the 2009 draft where Amobi Okoye got drafted. And he was he graduated high school at 15 and he graduated college, I think, at 18. So he was able to play he was drafted by the Texans in the first round as a 19-year-old player.
Doesn't sound like the right thing you should do moving forward in today's NFL.
Yeah,
But
his career didn't last too long, but you know what? I
surprise.
mean, something, I don't know. He's a
It's a
little
cool
bit.
stat.
Yeah.
It's definitely a cool stat, but Kenny Robinson, I mean, again, he did pretty well in the XFL. I'm surprised. What was it? Just the character concerns that made him wait all the way to the 5th round, or was there some play concern as well?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, there was a reason that he got kicked out of West Virginia. So like, there obviously he has a little bit of an arrest record. He has a checkered past. So I mean, that's not something that you really want to kind of get into or really show if you're that kind of a player that's trying to get drafted. But you know what? He's got some skill, and especially as a 5th round, late round flyer, why not grab a safety that can potentially start? Because he was just a starting player against, I mean, other grown men in another football league.
It was very confusing that he went that far. Again, I think he had 2 picks on 8 pass attempts playing in the XFL. Now, again, it's obviously not 1-to-1, but still shows that he's capable in some way, shape, or form. Now, in the 6th round, Matt Rule selects Bravion. That's even cooler. Defensive tackle out of Baylor. This is someone that he coached directly for at least the last 2 or 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. How is he? Is he more? I mean, 6th round. I'm assuming you're not grabbing a starter on the defensive line, but at what point do you think he could potentially get into that? Rotation at least, and then potentially even make it to the starting position.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people kind of saw that Bravion Roy was going to be more of like an undrafted free agent signing. So the fact that Matt Rule drafted him knows that he's a culture guy. So you're going to kind of bring him in. He's already bought into the culture that Matt Rule instilled at Baylor. So grabbing him at this point, I mean, why not? He's an athletic defensive tackle, as noted, because it says, and I mean, I was even trying to do research on this before. They say he ran a 4.49 40-yard dash at 332 pounds at a spring workout, which, I mean, I get it. You're kind of a little slow with the stopwatches nowadays. If it's not lazy, you really can't say it's confirmed. So, I mean, even if he kind of ran close to that at 332 pounds, that's still pretty freaking impressive.
I was going to say 4'6" at that size is still pretty damn impressive. So,
right. Just a little slow on the stopwatch. So
yeah, exactly. I think definitely, but you're right. I mean, it's surprising if a lot of people thought he was going to go undrafted. He went in the 6th round, but as you said, this is a Matt Rule guy. Literally, he's drafting him directly out of college, and that was another thing that I thought was interesting. He didn't really. I mean, there's not one thing that we can say other than Kenny Robinson, not too much Big 12 in this draft by him. So what do you think that says about defense in the Big 12? I love it. So that is fine. And then in the 7th round, the last pick, but I love every second of it. Stanley Thomas Oliver III, another cornerback out of FIU. I mean, this is depth. This is special teams at this point, I'm assuming.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And I mean, you're grabbing a kid who was a wide receiver only a short time ago, just a couple years ago. It kind of seems like a little bit of a theme of this year's draft where Noah Igbenogany, I always butcher, the kid from Auburn that got drafted in the 1st round. He was a wide receiver that they converted to a corner. And obviously it panned out for him. But I mean, Stanley Thomas Oliver III, we'll see. He's definitely a special teams guy right now. And it's kind of like I don't know, we'll see what he has. We'll put him on the field, put on the pads and kind of see what he can do.
And so how do you feel they did in the draft this year? And what do you think I mean, no fantasy insight for the draft picks, but how do you feel about some of the players moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like they're going to be feeding Christian McCaffrey the ball as much as they can. I get it. Like, Teddy Bridgewater is an upgrade over Kyle Allen, so that can only help him. I mean, the fact that they're kind of shopping around DJ Moore is a little weird because, like, you signed
Robbie Anderson?
Yeah, Robbie Anderson, who, I mean, they pretty much play the same position. They're the same kind of player. So why would you get rid of the younger, cheaper, better option and you bring in the older guy? So I don't know, a little bit of a weird one by Matt Rule, but I mean, clearly he knows who he's looking for. He knows what kind of culture he wants to build up in Carolina.
And I think that's the nice thing about signing. We make fun of that contract. We don't make fun of it. We kind of just sit in awe. We make fun of the Panthers more than anything about that contract because it's so long for a coach. You never see that. But maybe that's him saying, all right, well, I'm going to load up and I'm going to do what I want while I'm here. You're not going to fire me in the first 2 years. You can't, because then you have to pay me for another 7 or whatever the contract ends up being. So I think that's actually kind of nice. A little reassurance knowing that, okay, not that you don't have to win immediately, but you're given that a little bit more of a leash, which is, I mean, maybe that's something, as you said, maybe he can really start to say like, okay, what can we get for DJ Moore? Because I don't think he's going to be here in 3 years or whatever it is, and see if we can find someone that comes in like that.
I find that very hard to believe, but I'm also very, because of the skill position that they have around them, why is Teddy Bridgewater the quarterback that you bring in? A guy who has yes, he's very accurate at the ball, but he's very good at those underneath routes. Like, he's not very good at throwing
Yeah, how far is he
the
throwing it
deep ball.
exactly? Yeah.
So why do you have 3 speed wide receivers and then Christian McCaffrey? Like, are you just pretty much sending all 3 of these wide receivers on go routes the entire freaking game, and then you have Christian McCaffrey just catching a 5-yard dump pass the entire game? I don't fully understand it. So I wouldn't be surprised if something does happen to Bridgewater if that offense runs a little bit better through PJ Walker.
That is interesting. PJ Walker was fun to watch last year in the XFL this spring. They got rid of Kyle Allen too. I think they traded him to the Washington, but I don't remember what they got. It was pretty much nothing. If I'm not, it was they got that much. Good for him. Wouldn't be surprised. Derek and I didn't talk too much about it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kyle Allen might win that starting job there. So we'll see what happens. So overall, I think again, Matt Rule had an interesting draft, and we'll see what happens moving forward. I think they are looking more a couple years down the road as well. In 2 years, Drew Brees and Tom Brady most likely will not be there anymore. Yeah. So that's when, Matt Ryan will definitely be on the decline by then if you don't think he is already. And we'll see. Maybe that's when the Panthers are able to kind of leap, to use a cat term. Hope Brenna's watching. Sure. Moving on to the New Orleans Saints. They were 13-3, lost a heartbreaker, as we said, to the Minnesota Vikings in the playoffs. It was a push off. I don't think it was enough to call it, though. So it is what it is. Weird that it was at home and they didn't call it. Drew Brees did not look great in that game at all. Again, he got rushed up the middle a lot. They pointed it out on the broadcast, and Troy and Joe were on first name basis now. I think they did a great job at explaining it. Taysom Hill was the better quarterback in that game, which is pretty funny. He's coming back. It's a really, really weird contract. The first year's for like $4 million. The second year is for like $16 million or something, which there's no way in hell they're actually going to pay him that. So I'm really curious what that's all about. Emmanuel Sanders they brought in, Malcolm Jenkins they brought in on a one. Both of them are on 1 year flyers, if I'm not mistaken.
Malcolm Jenkins is 3 years.
Malcolm Jenkins got 3 years.
3 years, $24 million, I believe. I think it was $8 million a year.
I mean, I thought he was great on the Eagles, but there's no shot they pay him all that money. But it is what it is. And then they bring in Jameis Winston on a 1 year, $1.1 million deal for him to go to quarterback school. I think he called it. I think it's just to let his LASIK surgery set in so he can see if he can actually see anything moving forward. But they did lose Teddy Bridgewater, so I think that's actually an upgrade there to Jameis. Lost Von Bell, AJ Klein, Eli Apple sucks, so it doesn't matter. Manti Te'o also wasn't that great, so it doesn't really matter.
Sign though.
It's something there. It's the reason why. But and I also really like your little note here. Taysom Hill is now listed as a tight end / flex player in ESPN fantasy football. So that's something fun we might get to talk about in a little bit. Yes. But they had a very weird draft. They had 3 picks in the first 3 rounds. And then they didn't have anything until they traded back into the 7th round to grab Tommy Stevens, who I watched a little bit at Penn State. He sucks. So I don't really know why they did that. But hey, Sean Payton knows more than I do. How did you feel about those first 3 picks, though, in New Orleans? Yeah,
so, I mean, the reason they only had those first 3 picks in the first 3 rounds is because they trade their 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks to get Adam Troutman out of Dayton in the 3rd round. So they traded
that much for him?
Well, so think of it this way. That roster is as deep, if not the deepest roster on the entire team. So drafting guys in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round, those guys probably aren't going to make it. So why bother drafting those guys when you know that they're not going to make an impact in your team? So when they did trade all those guys up, they got 3 players that they had ranked in their top 40 players. So they found the guys that they wanted. They got them at spots they did not think was even possible. Even starting with Cesar Ruiz, they don't need offensive line, but you know what? They're creating competition. It basically put Larry Warford's right guard job on the line. And they did just draft Eric McCoy out of I forget where McCoy went last year, but he was a relatively early pick. So you grabbed him, and you're basically just creating this. I mean, they're just adding. You're just making it even deeper than what it was last year.
Yeah, and I think, again, how I feel about the trenches. You win in the trenches. As much as I hate Dave Gettleman, I actually think he's right on that. Maybe not right on all the picks, but he's right on what he's doing and building up an offensive and defensive line. I think that's the best way to do it. Now, I don't know enough about the Saints offensive line to say if they needed a center or Max Unger is still not there, is he? There's no way.
No,
feels like it's way too low.
So basically, you have Taron Armstead on the left. You have Andres Pete, left guard, who they just paid. Eric McCoy at center. Ruiz already is slotted in to be the right guard, and you have Ryan Ramczyk at the right tackle. So basically, you have the best offensive line in the entire league.
And again, someone gets hurt. That's just kind of how the NFL works. So if you're going to have another guy who can slide right in and who is starter quality, I think, again, you're completely right. They were looking for major upgrades in minor places, and I
Mhm.
think they definitely are going to be able to do that. And I think they were, in my opinion, the best team in the NFC last year. That weird San Francisco 49ers Saints game was awesome.
Yeah.
But I think the Saints win that game the second time. Honestly, I think it might come down to just Drew Brees. We thought him being hurt for a couple games and letting Teddy Bridgewater, because 2 years ago it was, he was tired. He didn't have anything on the ball anymore. Then this year
Mhm.
it was, oh, okay, well, actually, now he just kind of sucked in that last game. You gave him 6 weeks off, but he was kind of bad in that last game against Minnesota. And I mean, I think they needed wide receiver more than anything. So, I mean, they brought
Mhm.
in Emmanuel Sanders. So we'll see. He's definitely not washed up, but he's definitely not who he used to be.
But he's
And
able to like use his own variety to try and find ways to get open. And Sean Payton will
absolutely,
find different ways to scheme him to get him the ball, which is
absolutely.
all that Michael Thomas needs. Michael Thomas just needs somebody who's somewhat competent to be a wide receiver too, and Emmanuel Sanders can do that and then some.
And I think I still think they could have got somebody else,
Mhm.
but they did bring in Adam Troutman. Not
Yeah.
gonna lie, I don't know too much about anybody from Dayton. I think it's the first NFL team to draft a player out of Dayton since 1977. There's a reason for
Yeah.
that, so we're gonna
Yeah.
start there. But let's start with him, then we'll go back to Zach Braun.
Okay.
How do you think he fits into the offense? And I mean, can he be a legitimate threat when it comes to playing in the NFL?
What's crazy? The draft people as a whole, they're so bad at evaluating tight ends. We can never find there's a reason that George Kittle lasted to the 5th round, and everyone I think he pulled up his own scouting. Someone wrote like a little scouting report about him that he put up during the draft, saying that they only viewed him as a fullback. It's like, are you really like? I want to know the person that wrote that, and I want I want to see what kind of tape
He
he was
came out of
watching.
Iowa, right?
Yes, he did, but
So there was
still,
no quarterback play in Iowa. But yeah, I understand.
yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, and I mean Adam Troutman, another guy, big, versatile, athletic tight end who, I mean, we'll see. He's probably not going to be putting his hand in dirt too much to be a traditional tight end. They're going to be splitting him out wide a little bit, trying to using him like Rob Gronkowski was with the Patriots, just splitting him out there and just finding different ways to throw him the ball. So, especially being a, I don't know, quote unquote, big wide receiver,
Mm-hmm.
it's a position that'll suit him.
Yeah, I think, hey, we'll see. What about, and I know I love to ask this question, fantasy perspective. I mean,
Yep.
now with, Michael Thomas is still going to be, I'm assuming, wide receiver number 1, especially because
Yep.
we don't really know what DeAndre Hopkins is going to do out in Arizona. I think he's going to be great, but I don't think he's going to be I don't think he's going to be Michael Thomas.
I think his DeAndre Hopkins's upside could be higher, but his floor is lower, just because
That makes sense.
there's too many mouths to feed, so to speak, with Arizona now, and especially with Kyle Murray. Like
Mhm.
he's really only kind of throwing the ball 30 times a game, because instead of throwing the ball away or kind of trying to make something fit into like a tight coverage, he'll just take off and run, which other
he'll run for
quarterbacks
5
obviously aren't
yards.
doing. Yeah, so instead of
Exactly.
throwing those extra 5 passes, which with an extra potential for a couple extra catches for him, you're just not seeing that for Hopkins.
And you make a great point. I mean, Michael Thomas's floor is what, like 7 catches for 70 yards?
Oh
Like
yeah, it's
that's
wonderful.
floor. That's
No,
insane.
it's literally 90 yards. He's almost guaranteed 90 freaking yards every single game.
And I mean, if you look at it like that, I mean, I think, his worst game last year was the game against Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken, in the playoffs. But then I think he caught like 4 more balls, like just that final drive or whatever. And it's like, oh wait, now he's fine. So I mean, from a PPR perspective, he is an absolute monster, because again, it's not like 3 catches for 90 yards, it's 9 catches for 90 yards at a minimum. So the dude's always putting up double digit, low teens, high teens as a floor again, which I think is incredible. And he catches a bunch of touchdowns too. So I think he's great. But how, like Adam Troutman, again, now with Emmanuel Sanders coming in, who was their tight end? They have like nobody really at tight end.
They have the other Hill.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. They have nobody really at tight end. So how do you think
they have Jared Cook still? So it's not they're completely void of a tight end, but I don't know. My philosophy for fantasy, I've never taken a rookie tight end. Like, yes, TJ Hawkinson was a top 10 pick last year with Detroit, and in a spot where they needed another receiving option, he just didn't pan out his first year. I mean, rarely do rookie tight ends ever pan out. Noah Fant, the only reason that he kind of had a semi good run at the end of his season was because Drew Lock was kind of playing out of his mind. Otherwise, Noah Fant didn't do anything for like those first like 8 games, I think.
Yeah.
It's just kind of hard just taking those rookie tight ends. I don't really bank on them too much, but it's that second year jump where you're going to see Noah Fant, you're going to see TJ Hawkinson. Fant will obviously be drafted within the first, 8, 9 rounds or so. Hawkinson will probably go a little bit later than that, but you could definitely see them doing much better than their average draft position.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens there. I think just adding an extra viable option,
Mhm.
again, is just going to help Michael Thomas more, as weird as it sounds, and just kind of see what that can happen. Cause I think he's incredible and I want to watch him continue to catch balls, even though, and I have some good information.
Mhm.
He's apparently a huge dickhead. So that's not great, but it is what it is. Insider information, but it is what it is. Not my words, somebody else's. So we'll move on from there. So going
Is
back,
it quote unquote?
maybe, I don't know. I'll have to check my text messages. We'll see what happens there. Moving back a little bit higher into the third round, which is
Sure.
very surprising as well. Zach Braun,
Mhm.
edge out of Wisconsin.
Mhm.
A lot of people had him projected in the very late first round. I saw a lot of people had him going to Baltimore with
Yeah.
that 28, 29th pick. Why the heck? I know he had a flag drug test, but why the heck did he fall to the third round?
That was definitely one of them. And granted, when a player fails a drug test at the combine, they're either stupid or they did something that they shouldn't have.
Mhm.
And that's why the reason I don't even know if it's that he failed it. I think it's that it was a diluted sample that showed up, which means he tried to take one of those cleansing
Yeah.
things to try and flush out whatever was in his system because he knew he messed up. But at
Mhm.
least he tried that and didn't just show up to the combine
Yeah.
kind of high and then just piss into a cup and then just immediately I don't know, flagged it.
Mhm.
So I don't. I'll never understand why. Like, just don't smoke. Don't do anything for 2 months prior to the combine. Like, you're going to get drug tested at the combine. Just don't do anything. So whenever a player does that, it's immediately a red flag because, like, okay, you're kind of questioning their intelligence or you're questioning their judgment. So one
Mhm.
of the two, and either you don't really want to have to question.
And it's a good point, but then you have Mekhi Becton, if I'm not mistaken, had the exact same thing,
Mhm.
just a flag drug test. So why do you think someone like Mekhi Becton still goes in the top 15, the top 13, if I'm not mistaken, whatever it ended up being, versus someone like Zach Bond dropping all the way to the third round?
Well, tale of two stories. Becton's combine was historical. Bond's was one to be forgotten because Becton
Mm,
was like you showed up 6'7", 365 pounds, runs a 4.8 40, which I mean I ran a 4.75 in high school. So that basically means that he could catch me if he's chasing me, he could catch me. And I'm sure I actually probably know that he's in much better physical condition than I am right now. So he could definitely do that. But Zach Bond, Becton ran faster than Bond did. Bond ran like a 4.89 40-yard dash, I believe. So it's kind of a crazy stat that you're kind of looking at, like, okay, so you show up, you fail a drug test, you don't show up at your combine, you're kind of hoping on your pro day, but you don't get a chance at your pro day, so you can't increase his stock. So he was
yeah.
kind of he was behind the eight ball right away.
It is unfortunate, but I think, from an actual playing standpoint, how do you think he's going to fit into that defense? He
Mhm.
had a bunch of sacks last year, so I think he can be fun in that defense. I mean, how do you see him panning out? At
Yep.
least this first year.
Yeah, and they're another team that runs a 3-4, or actually no, sorry, they were on 4-3, but they kind of scheme it up a little bit, so they're kind of moving their players around,
Mhm.
and just another chess piece that you can kind of just add, especially because Marcus Davenport hasn't really shown a whole lot. If anything, Trey Hendrickson has shown more than Marcus Davenport has, and the Saints gave up an extra first round pick to trade up for Davenport. So I think
Mhm.
this is one of more of those. I don't want to say a fail safe, but it was just something that they can do to either push Davenport or someone that they can just kind of throw in there and just be like, okay, you can rush the passer, but you can also drop back into coverage a little
Mhm.
bit. So scheme versatility is key with those teams that are already deep.
Exactly. They're already deep. And again, as we were talking about it before, offensive and defensive line, he's pass rushing. So I'm going to consider him,
Mhm.
defensive lineman for that sake. And if you can get to the quarterback, you're going to have better chances at winning the game. Again, you have Matt Ryan, you have Tom Brady now in the division, Teddy Bridgewater. We'll see what happens. But you're going up against two potential Hall of Famers, MVPs, four times a year at a minimum. So I
Mhm.
think, again, if you can add any extra pressure on the line, it's just going to make your life easier. And again, as you said, they have one of the most stacked, like solidified rosters in the league. Places that you want to improve just because, or at least have depth, offensive line and defensive line. So I think that part's pretty important. And then, they picked Tommy Stevens. They traded back into the 7th round, I
Yeah.
think, with the Vikings, if I'm not mistaken, to take Tommy Stevens. He sucks. So, I don't know what the heck this kind of pick is. And I assume at this point, they already kind of knew they were going to sign Jameis Winston. I don't think that came together in 2 days.
Mhm.
Do you have any idea why the heck they wanted to do this?
Yeah. So Tommy Stevens is going to, he most likely won't make the team, but they love his upside because they see him as a Taysom Hill replacement. So when
Mhm.
Taysom Hill's contract either it runs out, or if they end up cutting him just to save some cap after next season or whenever it's viable for them, they're able to do that. But Tommy Stevens is that Taysom Hill type where he's that guy that you can use him in the exact same role. He can play gunner on punt. He can kick off. He can be on the kickoff. So he can kind of do like a whole bunch of things that Taysom Hill was doing, but at a much cheaper cost.
Mhm.
And I think their thought process is bring him in early. Let's see if we do see what we saw in him, like what we saw in Taysom Hill. And worst case, you bring him on the practice squad. Perfect practice squad quarterback can come in. He can. I mean,
he can run around a little bit depending on who you're playing against.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then he can throw the deep ball if you need him to throw the deep ball, depending on what kind of offense they're going to be facing that week. So it's a nice little pickup for them. Just I don't know. It's Sean Payton playing chess and everyone else playing checkers.
I mean, maybe, I don't know. It also sounds like he might just be overthinking it. Why it was like the 230 something pick. I don't know if you wrote it down, but like, what was he that afraid someone was going to trade up for a replacement to his third string quarterback? I think he's almost overthinking it just a little too much.
He was more afraid that he was going to go to a quarterback needy team. And then all of a sudden he kind of catches with a team and then doesn't leave.
He sucks. Like, he's not good. He couldn't even start at Mississippi State in his grad transfer year. He got beat out in Penn State. I can't even remember the Penn State quarterback's name off the top of my head, so apologies to him. But he's just not good, though. That's the thing that, like, again, it's like Jalen Hurts. He's not good. I don't understand.
They might not be using him as a quarterback. They might be using him strictly as a tight end or wide receiver or even just special teams depth. But it's a guy that you can use and you could be versatile with.
It's something. I mean, again, Sean Payton is significantly smarter than I am, so I'm not, gonna question his ability. I just think, again, like, I don't know. I feel like they could have. Whatever, they could have got something else. They could have traded for a wide receiver in the 7th round that actually would have made an impact on this year, especially considering they still needed wide receiver depth, and all they did was they brought in Emmanuel Sanders, so it's not like that sucks, but at the same time, there were still some guys in the 7th round that they could have absolutely grabbed and potentially done something with.
And I would still be concerned because Emmanuel Sanders, as he's gotten older, he's had a little bit of an injury history, so you do want to try and add depth behind him. So,
I mean, did Jimmy G overthrow Emmanuel Sanders, or was Emmanuel Sanders just too slow? We'll never really know the answer to that question. We'll never know the answer to that question. So how do you think it shakes out for the Saints next year in terms of what their offense looks like, what their defense looks like, and if they actually break through in the playoffs and make it to the NFC Championship game?
I mean, it's Super Bowl or bust. I mean, and they have the roster to do it. It's gonna be a matter of Drew Brees. As long as his body can handle everything, then he's gonna have to be the guy. He's gonna have to find a way to will him to victory because it's almost already looking like Alvin Kamara is starting to slow down. He did come out and say that he was playing at like 75% last year, so not entirely sure. And we never really knew what was going on, nor will we ever, because the Saints are very good at keeping everything internal.
Except for those priest emails. They didn't keep that very internal. Well, but we'll leave that anyway. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Kamara, I grafted him in a league last year. He was a little underwhelming, but he picked it up towards the end of the year because I guess he started to get a little healthy. Latavius Murray's still there, if I'm not mistaken. So
yes, and it's also Alvin Kamara's contract year too.
Yes,
so he needs the ball out this season. So if you are looking to draft somebody in the top 10, he's probably one of the guys you want to go after because he has to play well to get paid, or else he's going to be kind of grouped into that same stigma as all the other running backs.
Melvin Gordon. Yep, Melvin Gordon could have just taken a $13 million a year contract with the Chargers, instead decided to take 2 for $16.
Le'Veon Bell did the same thing.
Yep. Well, he got at least some guaranteed money.
Yeah, but he lost out on $12 million for not playing for an entire season. So
it is what it is. And now the Jets have to pay it.
That's why he fired his agent too. And I'm pretty sure it was Rock Nation.
Well, that's a whole, again, that's another conversation as well. And then the last question, we got to talk about it. Jameis Winston. I mean, Drew Brees, essentially the last 2 or 3 years, he gets hurt. It's just, he's so old, he's going to get hurt. If Jameis Winston steps in, I mean, are we just playing, Sean Payton just gonna be like, all right, throw it 50 times a game. We'll just see what the hell happens. Like, what do they do if Jameis has to come in for like a 4 or 5 game stretch?
The nice thing with Jameis Winston is that he's a pocket passer, so you don't have to change the playbook so much between him and Drew Brees. Whereas with last year, if you're trying to find a different way to have Taysom Hill come in and play quarterback, you're creating a totally different playbook for him. So with Jameis, you can come in, just kind of do the same thing that Drew Brees was doing, just to kind of drop back. You have 2 great backs you can hand the ball off to. You have a very good offensive line as opposed to what they had at Tampa Bay. And as wide receivers, I mean, granted, you'd rather have Tampa Bay's wide receiver core, but Michael Thomas is a pretty freaking good wide receiver you can throw to. So he's not going to be too worried about that. Plus, I mean, Sean Payton's a better offensive coordinator than Bruce Arians / Byron Leftwich is. So he'll find the ways to get Jameis comfortable in an offense, and that'll get him I don't know, doing what he should be doing.
I'm not rooting for anyone to get hurt, but I really do want to see Jameis Winston start like 3 or 4 games, just because, again, like yes, he threw a lot of interceptions, and yes, that's a reason why he needed to throw 30 something touchdowns and why he had to throw for over 5,000 yards. But I mean, he was the number 1 pick for a reason. I think the talent is there. I think he's just crazy and doesn't like this. I think will be a nice kind of year off. And this is also the other thing. Even if he doesn't re-sign with the Saints, he's probably going to sign somewhere for something like a Teddy Bridgewater deal. So then what happens? The Saints just get a 3rd round pick.
Yep.
That's it. That's all that happens. They're going to get one for Teddy, most likely, 3rd or 4th. Then they're going to get one for Jameis potentially. And all they did was bring a guy in. I mean, it's
pay him $1 million.
Pretty, 1.1 million. Incentives for 3.6
million.
Is it that much? So it's essentially like, hey, if you play, and I don't know what the incentives are. I don't know if you looked into it either, but
make the
probably
Pro
nothing
Bowl,
crazy.
Make the Pro Bowl, playoffs, Super Bowl victory.
Wow.
But I don't think he needs to be the starting quarterback for any of those. So the very good chance that he makes more than that 1.1 million. But if he ends up starting, then there's a lot of incentives for him to make more money.
I love it. I want to see it. But again, I'm not rooting for Drew Brees to get hurt, but I definitely do want to see it. So moving on.
I do want to say, I think that LASIK thing is going to be key for him, because he's already saying that his depth perception from a distance is already increased. Like, how, like, you idiot. How have you not already changed? Like, how did you not address this years ago? How did the Tampa Bay Buccaneers not notice that you're squinting at the scoreboard every single time?
That's the scariest part to me. He's a 23, 24-year-old kid. Okay, I was dumb at 23 and 24. I'm dumb now at 28, so it is what it is. But the people around you, your agent, your business manager, your parents,
they don't see you squinting?
There's GIFs on the internet. That's what I sent out with the tweet. It's just a GIF of him squinting, because that's all he did for his entire career. And nobody was just like, hey, man, like, let's try some like rec specs or something just to see. Like, let's just try it in practice one day. No one came up with that idea. Now, maybe they did, and maybe he was vehemently against it. I don't know. I don't know if there's a story out there like that. But even just to try it, man, it's ridiculous that no one decided to do anything like that. But he finally had it done. And now watch, he's not going to throw another interception for the rest of his life. I think that would be one that's his fault, at least, right?
What if that was the key to fixing everything?
Right.
For him?
Or at least throwing an interception to a linebacker that is clearly just standing right in front of him. He doesn't do that anymore. I think that would cut down a lot of them too.
One more stat. Jameis Winston has thrown more completed passes to Saints players than Taysom Hill has. I mean, I love stats.
Everybody thinks Taysom Hill should be a quarterback, and we all kind of know he should not. But it's a fun narrative to play with, so it is what it is. But moving on to the most interesting team, hands down, in the division, we have the Tampa Buccaneers, the Tampa Brady's, whatever the hell we want to call them. They finished 7-9 last year. Jameis went for 30 for 30, whatever you want to say, which is just incredible. First time that's ever done. As I said, over 5,000 yards. He's out the door. They obviously added Tom. That one wasn't even on purpose. Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski. They brought in Ndamukong Suh. JPP's back. Shaq Barrett's on a franchise tag, if I'm not mistaken. They did lose, as we said, Jameis Winston. They brought in lost Carl Nassib as well as Brashad Perriman, but that was embarrassment of riches at that point. So, I mean, going into the draft, I mean, offensive line, we all kind of knew was the biggest, but outside of offensive line, what else did the team need?
Well, I still think they need a running back, and I don't even think that they addressed it by selecting the correct running back. And granted, the guy that I really thought they were trying to key in on was Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who the Chiefs took with the 32nd pick. So the Buccaneers had no shot taking him because they weren't going to trade back into the first round to grab a running back. So I get it. You can find a running back almost anywhere nowadays. So hopefully the two that they drafted maybe pans out, because I still don't think Ronald Jones is I didn't think Ronald Jones was good at USC. And I don't think I think he goes in on first contact. He's not going to be a guy that Tom Brady's going to like, and he's terrible in pass protection. So why is Tom Brady going to want this guy in the field if he can't do anything right?
What about Peyton Barber? Does he do any of those things correctly?
No, not at all. And I don't even. I don't know. I mean, Peyton Barber's not on the team anymore. They let him go in free agency, so he's not even there. They have I always butcher the guy's name. It's Dare Agumbawale.
Oh, okay.
One day I'll learn how to pronounce it. But I mean, they drafted Keyshawn Vaughn, so hopefully he comes in and he overtakes Ronald Jones right away, just because I don't think he's a very good running back.
We'll see. I mean, running backs are weird. You know, Alvin Kamara was in the 3rd round, if I'm not mistaken. So it's definitely something. So, I mean, they grabbed a running back out of Vanderbilt. So it's SEC, but it's really not the SEC. It's Vanderbilt. It's a little different. So first round, Tristan Wirfs just fell so far. I mean, so many people had him. Some people had him going 2nd overall to the the Washington Redskins, and that person was very wrong, because he was Derek. But other than that, I mean, a lot of people had him going 4th overall to the Giants. If not there, they had him going 10th to the Bucks. If not there, they had him going to the Jets at 11, I think.
Mhm.
He just kept dropping. He fell all the way to 13 where the 49ers were picking. They swapped pick with the 49ers. I think they gave him something like a 4th or a 5th.
Mhm.
How do you think he fits, and does he pretty much just start immediately at left tackle?
Yeah, I mean he's gonna have to start immediately left tackle because they don't really have anyone else that's behind him. I mean, one of the reasons he did fall is I know Derek was talking about it yesterday on the podcast that his mechanics are a little off. I think it was more of that the media saw him as as a better offensive tackle than some of the other true offensive tackles because this guy was, I don't know, he was a combine
Darling?
yeah, he's a combine darling. Like he came in, blew up the combine, did extremely well. So I don't know. I do think that he has the potential to be a very good left tackle. Do I think he's going to be otherworldly like some other people do? No, I don't think so. But you know what? I think he has the talent to be there, and Tom Brady will be one of the guys that can kind of coach him up and be like, "You're watching my blind side. You better hold your block."
And I think again with Tom Brady there now, you don't have to hold the block nearly as long as you did with Jameis Winston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're only holding it for 2.5 seconds.
Exactly. He's going to get the ball. He's going to get the ball out of his hands. And yeah, I mean, you have Mike Evans. Yeah, you have Chris Godwin. So you do want to throw the ball deep. But I think Bruce Arians is smart enough to say, I want to win.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do much of that the last couple of years with Jameis Winston throwing the ball deep. Let's see what happens. So I am curious to see what does happen there. I think, again, I mean, you have OJ Howard, you have Gronk now, Cameron Brate's still on the team. I mean, if that's not just, you can't have all 6 of them on the field at once. That's just not technically how football works, but it's going to be interesting, and I'm definitely excited. And thank you, Sia. Yes, my friend Sia, he was really excited about Tristan Wirfs, but unfortunately he had the under 8.5. Sia, I will never let you live that down. And he went a little bit further than that, if I'm not mistaken, at 13. So that was very interesting. So then out of Minnesota, Antoine Winfield, we've heard that name once or twice before, if I'm not mistaken, but that's because it was his pops.
Yeah.
How did you feel about him? And I mean, was this a pick of need? Was this just he dropped there and he was too good to pass up? How do you feel about him fitting into that Bucs defense?
Yeah, no, I absolutely loved him, and they did need a free safety just because Justin Evans has been injured. He's had this foot injury that's kind of lingered around the last couple seasons, so not exactly a vote of confidence in him. But you know what? Sometimes when you have Tom Brady, you have a 2-year window. You just need to bring in somebody that you know is going to come in. But I mean, the problem is you're drafting Antoine Winfield Jr., who has a little bit of an injury, a checkered past history also. So you're bringing him in, and you're kind of hoping that one of them stays healthy for the entire season. But his talent is extraordinary. He's so good with the ball in the air. His instincts are fantastic. He's a little slow in coverage, but you know what? It kind of makes up for it with those instincts.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll be honest, I only really watched like 2 Minnesota games. I think it was the Penn State game where they won pretty well. And I think he even had a pick, if I'm not mistaken, in that game, even 2 maybe. And then I can't remember the other game I watched, but they got just brutally hammered. It was bad. So it's an interesting, I mean, you know, I was all for PJ Fleck, and I think that's great, but we will see. I mean, again, you know, his dad played in the NFL for a very long time. So if he can be half the player, I think everyone would be relatively happy about that. And again, I think, you know, one thing everybody says about the Bucs defense, and I think we'll be able to talk about this a little bit. Everyone thought, some people think the Bucs defense is terrible. Some people think it's okay. I think if you take away 18 interceptions and not constantly being down or not constantly having to kind of always continuously backpedal, like I think that's just going to help them significantly. If you can take that amount of time out, they'll just be fresher in all these games. I mean, think about that. Take literally 1 possession away every single game. You're going to let up less points. That's literally just how math works. So I think that's one thing. How do you think the defense will be now that instead of Jameis Winston just throwing a million interceptions, you're going to actually have Tom Brady, a competent quarterback there who can actually create drives and actually go down the field and score points and do what you need to do to have a successful team?
So 2 things. They're going to be fresh. They're going to find out quickly that their legs are going to be much fresher towards the end of the season because Jameis isn't constantly ruin these drives where he's getting the ball and then immediately throwing an interception after the other opposing offense had already driven down down the field and then scored. So, and then they have to send the defense right back out there, and it's never going to work out. You're never going to have a chance to succeed as a defense when that's constantly happening. So, I mean, 30 interceptions is crazy, not including the fumbles that he had as well. So, granted, Tom Brady's going to come in. I don't know what 7 interceptions is his ceiling. Like,
let's call it 10.
Yeah, even still, that's 2/3 less than what Jameis kind of messed up with last year. So, yeah, I think that it'll work out for that defense a lot more.
I mean, I guess I'm the outlier, but I'm actually kind of excited to see what Tom Brady's going to look like, just in a uniform, first off. But I think,
Mm.
in that offense, Bruce Arians is smart, as we said before. Maybe he's not Sean Payton smart, but he's clearly a smart dude. I think they're gonna dial something up, and it's going to be, hopefully, Keshawn Vaughn, as we talked about a little bit, he can actually do something as the running back, and they can at least have a little bit of a committee with Ronald Jones there. But we will see, and hopefully it does work out. I don't know. I think their defense is going to be a lot better than it was last year. I think it'll be fresher, and all those pick sixes too. As you know, the defense never touches the field in a pick six, but if you could just add 7 points to the other side, it doesn't help the defense in any way, shape, or form. It actually kind of hurts them even more. So it's a little frustrating, but it is what it is. So we talked about Keshawn Vaughn a little bit. Third round, they needed a running back, obviously. I mean, how is he? What does he do that made him worthy of this third round pick, especially when I know a couple of the other guys, J.K. Dobbins came off the board in the second. Jonathan Taylor came off the board in the second.
Yep.
Cam Akers came off the board in the second.
Was
there an opportunity for them to trade up? Did you think that this was the right pick? How do you feel about this one?
I don't think there was an opportunity to trade up just because they needed to keep adding depth to the rest of the teams. They want to keep giving up draft picks to find different ways to move up just to grab a running back, because like we were talking about before, you can find running backs anywhere. It's just a matter of the fit and scheme for them. But I did find something kind of funny about him. He was one of the 2 SEC backs last year and the year before with back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. It's him and DeAndre Swift. And I would never utter Keyshawn Vaughn's name in the same words as the same sentences as DeAndre Swift, but clearly there's some skill there. Like he's a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got good balance when he has hit, so he can kind of sustain his momentum through blocks, through tackles, which is the opposite of Ronald Jones. So I think that'll kind of work out for them.
Yeah, and hopefully that actually does, because again, I think if you can give that offensive line a little bit of help, and not have to just rely on throwing for that 5,000 yards and 30-something touchdowns, I think that's going to be significantly helpful. Moving forward, another Minnesota guy, Tyler Johnson. That was a name, again, watching a lot of Big Ten football, definitely heard his name come up a bunch. Yeah. I think, did you have him in our fantasy dream?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think 2 years in a row I had him.
He was pretty damn good. Why did it take till the 5th round for him to come off the board?
You know what? He's a very solid slot receiver, and you just don't draft. And we saw the same thing with Justin Jefferson. I get that everyone was freaking out when the Eagles took Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. It's because Reagor was an outside wide receiver and Jefferson's an inside slot guy. You just don't draft those guys that early. I know there were some things with Tyler Johnson, like there were maybe some character concerns, or he didn't interview as well. I mean, nothing to note because a lot of it's just rumors, so we don't exactly know the truth behind all of it. But there were some things that were said that, I mean, it was all behind closed doors, so we're not entirely sure. But I mean, he's a very good wide receiver. Past 4 seasons, he led all Power 5 schools in receiving yards, red zone catches, red zone yards, and red zone touchdowns. Like, wow, perfect. I mean, he's not going to see that amount, those many targets in the red zone this year, because you have Gronk, you have Godwin, you have Mike Evans. So you have 3 trees out there that are up there that are all over 6'4", 6'5". But you know what? If he's able to find different ways to get on the field and get open, I mean, he'll have a pretty good season.
What does Tom Brady love the most?
Plus, one of the reasons
receivers.
Yes, yeah. Plus, one of the reasons they drafted him is because Chris Godwin's going to get paid at the end of next season. So, pending what the Buccaneers do, if they're able to kind of finagle the cap a little bit, which we know the cap isn't real. But I just don't find it. I can't see there being a way that you keep Tom Brady, Mike Evans, JPP, Shaq Barrett, and Chris Godwin all on the same team. And if Gronk wants to maybe play an extra year, granted, they're paying him $10 million this year. They won't pay him $10 million next year. It'll probably be something like 5. He does want to keep playing, but I think he's only back for this 1 year.
We will definitely see. And then a couple of late round picks we have here. Khalil Davis, defensive tackle out of Nebraska.
Yep.
Chappelle Russell, linebacker out of Temple. And then Raymond Calais, I assume.
Yeah.
Running back out of Louisiana. I'm assuming
not
Louisiana.
LSU.
Yeah, not LSU. More of the tech side. What do you know about these 3 later round picks for the Bucs?
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty much adding depth in special teams. Khalil Davis is a guy that I kind of had my eye on, mainly because when I was watching Nebraska's defensive line, I was more watching Khalil Davis's twin brother, Carlos, who Khalil Davis was a physical freak in his own right, where he ran a 4.75 40 at 308 pounds. Carlos Davis, who was 20 pounds heavier, ran a 4.82. So it's just kind of crazy that both brothers were there. Both are twins, and then both ended up getting drafted. I know Carlos got drafted in the 7th round, so a round later than his brother. But Khalil, he's he's this physical freak, but he gets pushed around a lot, which was kind of crazy for a guy that's that athletic and that big at the same time. You think that he'd be able to find a way to use his hands or use his athleticism a little bit more, but clearly he needs some coaching. So what a better place to go to than Tampa Bay, and you kind of have some time to kind of sit there and really, I don't know, learn from some great defensive line players.
I mean, they did bring in Ndamukong Suh. I mean, that's. I mean, I know he's crazy and he like doesn't practice with the team or whatever. He's kind of just shows up on game day, but at least you can learn what to do during the game. I think that part's pretty important too.
And he's sitting behind Vita Vea, who plays a great nose tackle position. He's able to come in and just eat up 2 offensive linemen at a time. So Vita Vea will show Khalil Davis the right way to do it.
Practice as well. I think that's important. And then what about Chappelle Russell, linebacker out of Temple?
Yeah, so he's going to be an inside linebacker. I know that he did have ACL tears in 2016 and 2017, but you know what? He's been fine the last couple of years. So maybe they were just 2 freak injuries that kind of just happened for him. And the crazy thing is, despite being an inside linebacker, he's great at blitzing. So Todd Bowles loves to blitz his linebacker. So I think that's kind of like a match made in heaven for him. So he'll be just another versatile linebacker that they'll find different ways to get on the field.
And that's nice. And then they drafted another running back in the 7th round. You have a cute little note here. Bruce Arians calls him a joystick.
Yeah, he calls him a joystick in his interview. Yeah,
definitely sounds like fun. He's a small dude, 5'8", 188. I mean, that's barely heavier than me. Granted, I'm sure it's more muscle than I have, but still, I mean, he's not that much heavier than I am. I mean, at this point, it's a random flyer. It's special teams. Like, what can you really be doing with some guy that drops all the way to the 7th round?
Yeah, because he's a kickoff return guy. So they're coming in, they're hoping, I mean, he adds, I mean, not saying he's Devin Hester, but you're hoping that he comes in, he finds different ways to just push the ball down the field off kickoff, maybe catch a few punts or find different ways to do that. The weird thing with Calais, and I mean, it's kind of strange because Tom Brady still doesn't really have a pass catching back out of the backfield. Like Keyshawn Vaughn, pretty good at it, not great. He's more of a between the tackles kind of guy. Ronald Jones just isn't good. But Calais only caught 17 passes in his entire collegiate career, and he's not good in pass protection. So kind of a weird pick for them. I almost feel like he's not going to be the one that sticks on the roster. They'll find an undrafted free agent that will find a way to put his body on the line to do everything he can to make sure that he's on the team playing with Tom Brady.
Yeah, and I mean, running backs are weird, man. I think in the same draft, the Seahawks took Rashad Penny with their 1st round pick, and then in the 6th or 7th round, they picked Chris Carson, and Chris Carson is clearly the much better running back. So you never really know what the heck you're getting out of running backs. As we saw, one went in the 1st round this year, but it was a very special situation with, hey, if we just had a running back, how much better do you think the Chiefs could be? So that one was interesting. And then I think 4 went off the board in the 2nd round. So we had Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, Jonathan Taylor, Thomas. I don't think I'm saying them in order. And then who else? Who's the 4th running back that came off the board in the 2nd round? I'm forgetting somebody, but still DeAndre Swift. Thank you. Thank you, Justin. I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
Coming in hot with that one.
You caught that right before me.
Right. You gotcha. But I mean, running backs are so weird. I love Saquon. Was he worth the number 2 overall pick? I mean, you don't really know until like 5 years down the road, and we'll see, was it worth the number 2 overall pick? I love him, and watching him every day or every Sunday is just brings a tear to my eye because he's so incredible. But we'll see. And I mean, maybe it's the 7th round pick that's the guy that actually pans out versus the 2nd round pick in Ronald Jones. You really never know. I mean, I guess what do you think about just running backs in general, especially this year's class?
You know what? I think they had a pretty deep class. I mean, considering what you're looking at towards next year with Travis Etienne and some of those guys coming out next year, there's another deep crop of running backs coming out. But you know what? It's kind of weird because like outside of Cam Akers going to the Rams, all the other running backs found a spot where they're kind of already second in line. DeAndre Swift is behind Kerryon Johnson. I'm not.
We'll see about that one.
Yes, granted, I know, but
but
with this offseason being the way it is, it's going to be very hard for DeAndre Swift to surpass Kerryon Johnson from the get-go. It's going to take a few games, or I mean, he's going to have to play every preseason game, so hopefully he stays healthy. And a lot of these guys, I don't want to say it, but they're going to get hurt when they come back in because they're not putting their bodies out there right now, and just at least kind of having that constant contact, which their bodies kind of need to get ready and get ready to get into the season.
It's definitely weird, and I mean, you look at it, a lot of the backs did come in, as you said, other than Cam Akers, but that's clearly going to be a split system there. You know, we'll see what Henderson is capable of doing, but I do think he'll be a little bit better than he was last year. He started to come on a tiny bit at the end of the year, so we'll see what happens there. J.K. Dobbins, obviously behind Mark Ingram, but I don't even know if you can say behind because I think they're going to run the ball 1 million times as they did last year. I think that's embarrassment of riches. We were talking about the Bucs with their wide receivers. I do think J.K. Dobbins, I don't know how useful he'll be in the beginning of the year, but I think
towards the end of the season.
Yeah, towards the end of the season, I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And as much as I hated Ohio State again, he was so much fun to watch. I thought he'd go higher. And then DeAndre Swift, as we talked about him a little bit, I was never a really big fan. You like him a little more than I did. And then now I'm forgetting Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, he'll surpass Marlon Mack, but Marlon Mack is in his contract year, so he's gonna have to ball out.
So it's one of those things where you're bringing in most of these running backs to just say, all right, let's learn the offense. You're going to contribute, but next year is the year you're actually going to start to contribute. And you made another good point and started to jump around a little bit, but all those running backs that are coming out next year, most of them should have came out this year. And the draft class would have been insane. You add Travis Etienne, add Chuba Hubbard. Thank you for saying his name incorrectly like you always do. But I mean, you add both of them to this class, and this class then becomes just absolutely insane. And I'm sure they have their reasons on why they wanted to stay, but another 300 touches and another 250 tackles, whatever it is, without them running out of bounds. Like, we know how running backs work now. I'm sorry. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, they do what they got to do. I'm not here to tell them I'm sure they're getting paid a couple bucks too, but I just don't get it. I don't know why they didn't all come out.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that remains to be seen. Well, I know one of the reasons that Chuba Hubbard went back is because he wanted his degree. So I get that was
college is always there. College is never leaving.
I know it's. Aaron Donald just graduated from Pittsburgh. He just finished getting his degree. So he's using his quarantine time wisely. But
Ray Lewis killed somebody, then went back to college. That it just works. It happens. It is what
allegedly, it is. Allegedly,
but he was there. He was there. But
he said he blacked out. He said he blacked out the entire time. You just remember standing up over top of the guy and he was screaming at him. He was already on the ground. So
I'm sure. I'm sure he was
maybe
blacked
he
out. Yeah, maybe. But so with that, let's actually hop back to the Bucs for a second. We went off on a little tangent there. Moving forward, I mean, how did you like their draft overall? With grabbing a couple running backs, with grabbing one offensive lineman. That's the other weird thing. There was some depth picks they could have went with, especially in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. Didn't pick anybody else up. I mean, is Wirfs enough to make it for Tom Brady now worth it to play behind this offensive line?
I would say yes, mainly because they still have Donovan Smith. So Donovan Smith, for the time being, is still the left tackle. If Wirfs comes in and he shows that he's that much better, they'll move him to left side. I think Donovan Smith has played right tackle in his career, so that won't be that as hard of a process for him to kind of switch over to that side. Either way, Wirfs has played right tackle in his career at Iowa, and he also played some guard too, so you can kind of use him wherever you really need him to. They re-signed Joe Haig, who was the right tackle last year, so you have some depth at that position. They drafted Ali Marpet a couple years ago. He's been pretty well. Ryan Jensen has been there, so they do need some depth picks, but when you only have 8 picks, there's only so much that you can do with that team. You're just kind of hoping that you find some hidden gems and undrafted free agency, or you just kind of hope that there's some guys that come available, like Gabe Jackson right now. I know the Raiders are floating him around, so possibly he's available for a trade. And if he stands as an upgrade over one of the guys that the Bucs have, then go for it. Why not give up a 5th round pick or 6th round pick for next season? Because Tom Brady only has 2 years.
Exactly. He's only got 2 years, so you can. I thought Trent Williams was a great spot for them, and considering I think the 49ers only gave up a 3rd next year and a 5th this year.
Yeah.
That was very confusing why the Bucs. Maybe they were in on that conversation. They just decided it wasn't worth it. But if you could shore up both tackle positions immediately, or even, as you said, push Tristan Wirfs inside and he's going to be successful there too. That sounds like a pretty damn good opportunity, but who knows?
And that's the great thing with Bruce Arians is like he's great at talking to these players. Just from watching that All or Nothing on Amazon Prime, it was a great look into kind of watching him as he was able to teach these players. He was talking to Tyrann Mathieu a lot, and just as a man-to-man, person-to-person, just a conversation, just about anything, just to kind of get an insight for how they're doing in their personal life, how they're doing with everything that's going on in the crazy industry that is the NFL.
That is the NFL. So how do you think this shakes out for the Bucs next year? Bringing in Tom Brady, bringing in Gronk, getting a single offensive tackle, maybe have an actual backup running back or a running back. What do you think? I think the defense is better, as we both agreed, because you're taking away 18 to 20 interceptions potentially. But what do you think the offense looks like? Is it going to be anywhere near as potent?
I would have to say yes, because this is the most talent that Tom Brady's played with since the Randy Moss days, really. Yeah. And even still, there was mainly just Randy Moss and Wes Welker kind of running around. He didn't even have Rob Gronkowski or Aaron Hernandez at that point. So this is probably the most talented skill position that he's ever been around. And I'm just kind of worried about Byron Leftwich being the offensive coordinator. I almost feel like at a certain point, if the Buccaneers drop 2 of the first 4 games, 3 of the first 5, something like that, I think there's a good chance that they give Bruce Arians, the offensive coordinator, play call back, and they kind of make him into the guy. Find different ways that Tom Brady or Tom Brady becomes his own little coach and finds different ways to just run the offense to the perfection or the best way that he knows how to run an offense.
And I think, again, with this being a very weird offseason, I think it would be different if it was a normal offseason where he could go in and get all the reps with everybody that he needs to and kind of do his thing there. But I think if they're kind of just going to get thrown into training camp like right away with very little notice and then right into preseason, I don't think it's going to end up that well. And again, it's not like their division's easy. The Saints are still one of the best teams in the NFC, hands down. I mean, it's not like they improved, but I don't think they improved that much.
Well, that's because they still had a stacked roster, so it's like there's only so much better.
No,
than
I mean the
really
Bucks.
Get.
I don't think
Bucks,
the Bucks. I'm sorry. The Bucks, I don't think improved that much.
Yes. Well, you know what? They're dropping 20 interceptions. So either way, their defense got better, their offense got better, their special teams got better. Just with that little, and then you know what? Adding a guy like Tom Brady, the leadership, the experience is just completely invaluable. So
Gronk too.
And Gronk, yeah, a guy that can buy into Tom Brady's culture and really kind of help groom Tampa Bay into what he had in New England.
And then, so fantasy perspective, I mean, you know, there's only one ball, as they like to say in basketball. I mean, how Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, OJ Howard, I think is pretty useless. He's kind of, in my opinion, washed up. Cameron Brate is still pretty okay. I'd say those last two guys, not as much as the first three. What do you think it shakes out in that perspective? And which running back are you potentially going to be looking at in a draft?
I'm looking at Keyshawn Vaughn. Granted, I want to kind of see how they do in training camp, and kind of hear some of the things coming from preseason. I mean, hopefully, knock on wood, we have something along those lines, so that way we can kind of really get a look into what kind of offense they're going to be running with those running backs, and which running back really takes control of everything. I mean, you know what? I didn't think there was a way that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both succeeded in an offense last year, but when Jameis Winston was just kind of chucking the ball up at times, and both those guys are coming down with it. I mean, maybe it works. They both finished top 10 fantasy last year. I don't see a reason why they don't finish both top 15 this year. Their stats are going to be. It's going to go down. It's going to go down just a little bit, just because there's not going to be as many passing yards being thrown, because they'll have to lead more, so they'll be running the ball a little bit more. So I don't know. I would say Tom Brady is going to finish the top 12. Top 10. Quarterback's getting pretty deep now with fantasy, so I can definitely see him kind of falling around that category right there. Running back, one of them is going to have to step up. I mean, I think Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber were like in the 40s and 50s of fantasy last year. Like we
said that last year too. One of them had to stand up, and I had both of them at one point and would just play the wrong one consistently. So I think I just dropped them both, because even if I played the right one, it was like 16 points anyway, so it wasn't even that worth it. But how do you? So Tom Brady, what do you actually think happens in the division? How do you think the division shakes out? We get that extra playoff seed, so I think that will make it a lot easier for the Bucks to get into the playoffs. But I mean, how do you feel about the division? I think their win total's at 9.5 right now. The Buccaneers. The Saints, I think, is 10.5. Like, how do you feel like that's going to shake out? I still don't think the Falcons are going to be that great. I still don't think the Panthers are going to be that great, but I think it's up to them too.
I would take the over on both those, mainly because they have experienced quarterbacks and they have experienced coaching staffs. So they're already coming into the season, and they're going to have a plan that's much better than someone like Matt Rule would, just because he's being a rookie head coach in the NFL. So like, obviously he doesn't know exactly everything that needs to be done at the time they need to be done. So when you have a guy with the experience like Bruce Arians and Sean Payton, they know exactly how to get their players ready in the minimal amount of time for them to get ready. I would still put the Saints to win the division, but the Bucks are obviously nipping at the heels of them.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think they both make the playoffs. Kind of curious to see how it shakes out from there, but there's always a team that comes out of nowhere. The NFC is relatively wide open in terms of there's a lot at the top and a little bit at the bottom, so we'll kind of just see what happens. Does Aaron Rodgers just get angry enough that he doesn't play anymore? I don't know. We'll have to find out.
New England.
Yeah, we'll see about that. But Justin, this was awesome. We did the entire AFC South, a little bit longer than the other ones, but it was a lot of fun. We have two legitimate teams and a lot of question marks and mystery, so this was a lot of fun. I am Michael Rasile. That is Justin Rasile, cousins, not brothers. Appreciate everyone's time. Justin, where can everyone find you on the internet?
Yep, at JRasile81, just like the candy.
Just like the candy, because people know what that is. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Come on.